Hey guys, what's going on? Shaw here, and today in this video you're going to just get to hear me rant a little bit about Guardian Druid and how it's been performing up to this point so far this season. I've been playing Guardian Druid in about 30 or so timed keys. I have a couple of 20s on my board. You'll see me go quickly over that my Raider.io profile in the video, and I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts because a lot of you have been asking me about my experience so far playing on the Guardian Druid, and well, I'll let me explain it. Enjoy. All right. Guardian Druid, how is it? How's it doing? Checking in. I'm not totally impressed by this, but this is my Guardian Druid's page, and this is my credentials. So if you're looking for credentials on this video, this is me pugging most of my week. I was able to time almost every key at a 17 or higher. Couldn't find a fucking good junkyard or gambit to save my life, man. Anyways, sitting at 67 world, 24 region, 3rd realm. And I want to talk about my experience so far playing this shit spec. Jumping over to subcreation, we're seeing this is a great site, by the way. If you don't know what it is, I'll try to remember to leave it in the description below, but it's a site that aggregates data from Warcraft logs, from the Armory, and from Raider.io. And it basically puts it all into one place and puts it into the most, like, in this tier list format, so you can see which specs are performing well and which specs are performing poorly. I have explained this video before, and I will maybe link that up in the description, or up there in that corner. That corner? Yeah, sure. Really cool. So it also shows you what keys are good too, like what keys are being timed at the highest and the lowest. So you can obviously, like, lower and upper are really difficult compared to things like Yard, Gambit, Streets, which are keys that we're either used to or get carried by bots, which I think they're getting a buff anyways. So for the first time in a very long time, we're seeing a tank perform well below the kind of the margin here, this A tier. The tank balance most of Shadowlands has been excellent. Obviously there's some issues season 1, but in season 1, oh god, this is going to turn to a rant in a second. I'm going to try to prevent this, but I'm going to make it quick. So in season 1, people were trying to figure out stuff. Obviously we didn't have access to a couple cool powers. There was limited trinkets. Some classes just obviously needed help, and it's that way for all classes. At the start of a tier, classes that don't really care about secondary stats tend to perform better than classes that do. But for the first time, I think in a late season, we're seeing a spec perform very, very poorly. And I have a couple theories on why that is, and it's because they're bad. So it's kind of crazy. So if we actually drop this detailed statistics analysis for tanks, you're seeing the top key for Blood Decay be 28 and the top key for Guardian Druid be 25. Now, obviously this comes down to Junkyard, so we can't really chalk it up to that. But even most of the other tanks have been completing these kind of like higher keys. So we have 27s being timed by DHs and Prot Warriors, and then the Prot Paladin actually also has a 28 similar to BDK, and then of course you have the Brewmaster Monk down at the just the 26. Now again, this does come to access to keys. Some groups and some people who aren't playing the meta, the Blood Decay from last season coming into this season, you're seeing a lot less of these tanks having access to the junkyards and stuff. So we're going to see this kind of maybe get a little bit closer as we progress into the future weeks. And there's also Brewmaster Monk and Guardian Druid really need / want gear from Sanctum of Domination, which we haven't had access to. So a lot of these tanks like Prot Paladin and Vengeance DH didn't really rely on, even Prot Warrior didn't really rely on Sepulchre loot, and Brewmaster and Guardian really rode out the Sanctum of Domination gear even until it was extremely outdated. So even in season 3, these players were still running old loot from old raids to be competitive. And Blood Decay, obviously a lot of their good stuff came from Sepulchre. You're also the representation here. You're seeing over 2,000 Blood Decays being ran and only 45 Guardian Druids. So there's a pretty massive difference between these. Even Warrior, right? Like Prot Warrior is the next most underrepresented tank here at 186, and even that's 4 times as much as Guardian Druids. So I want to talk about why Guardian Druid's suffering right now, and probably why people aren't playing it, because it does feel pretty bad to play. The first thing I want to do is jump over to Wowhead and just kind of point out the one ability that I think a lot of people might be aware of or might not be aware of, because I also kind of wasn't aware of this when the season started, because I didn't really read about the season at all. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to hit me, it's going to do an AoE, and it's going to put down a pool, cool. And I didn't actually like read this. So Vampiric Claws is the ability that most of these Nathrezim infiltrators will cast. You'll probably see anywhere between 6 to 10 of them or more in a run. Depends how many you try to route in, depends on the dungeon. But they do this every, what would you say, 15 seconds, 12 to 15 seconds, and they strike the tank or whoever has threat. So if a DPS rips, they're going to be taking it as well. And based on the damage that they deal, they heal for 300% of that damage. Most tanks who are smart see this and they're like, okay, so every time Vampiric Claws comes out, it's a tank buster, but not only is it a tank buster, but I need to prevent as much damage as possible. As much as I can, whether it's like rolling a big defensive or using a massive absorb or using a trinket or whatever it might be. But the idea is to prevent this ability from doing as much damage. You don't want it to go full. So the problem with Guardian Druid is we have Barkskin in our kit, 20% DR and a 1-minute CD. We have Survival Instincts, 2 charges of them, 3-minute CDs. And we have Incarnation, which is just really a health boost, plus gives us like when we use Ravenous Frenzy or whatever. So it's not great. And this is coming from the standpoint, this is coming from the perspective of you're a Venthyr Bear, you're playing the most common spec to run in keys, and that's how you that's how you're playing. You're not playing Necrolord, because like you can go into Necrolord, get Fleshcraft as a DR and use that. Fine, good strategy. I've seen a lot of people be playing Kyrie, and Kyrie doesn't really help out as much on the damage reduction department, but it also helps. There's a lot of debuffs that you want to remove with the Kyrie file. Fine choice. So we're not able to actually mitigate this properly, which is causing Guardian Druids to fall over. Or what's finding, you're getting into this like cyclical kind of fight where you're doing your DPS can whittle it down by 30%, and then it hits the tank it hits their Guardian Druid for a lot. It goes right back up to 100%, and then you get it down 30%. It hits the tank, that heals right back up to full. And this is obviously coming from the perspective of like, this is my experience running like 22s, 21s, and 20s this season. And it's a lot of the keys that I didn't time, but even the timed keys, we're wasting, I think, way more time than other groups killing these, because I just use survival on the last pull, or I use survival instincts on one of these claws, but then the next claw or two will like heal itself back up. I've had pulls where a DPS dies to a mechanic because they weren't, paying attention, or they weren't familiar with the dungeon yet. And then all of a sudden, when you're 2-manning the Nathrazim, Vampiric Claws is just mega leeching. I'm sure people have also experienced that with the Blood Barrier from Zolgamek, which is being nerfed this week, which is good, obviously. So it's just Guardian Druid's really struggling at this. They're also struggling at putting out good single target damage. They're losing threat. You kind of have to play with an MD despite the threat nerfs or threat buffs back in 9.2. Yeah, those threat buffs aren't perfect, especially now that we don't have access to Barkskin as much. Without we are finding ourselves to be struggling. If I look like I'm crying, it's just because I yawn and then I cut it out. I roll out of bed and I started recording this. And then lastly, I just kind of want to talk about, I guess I'll also talk about the loss of the buff compared to this, because I just finished talking about Shrouded. Guardian Druid's lost and while it didn't, actually, I think it benefited our Incarn. I know that might be a hot take, but we now don't have to sit on Incarn for any reason. We can now pair Incarn with trinkets, which makes it even stronger, which allows Incarn to be treated as more of a DPS cooldown instead of a use Incarn to pull big around DPS cooldown, which is fun. But it hurt us in the department of the double dipping factor of Frenzied Regen recovering quicker, plus getting Barkskin back quicker, which gives us Incarn for a couple seconds. That gives us faster regen of our Frenzied Regen. That was a lot of words. So essentially, hurt us in the shorter cooldown factor, but it actually benefited us with our actual major CD. And that might be a hot take, but that's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Because we lost those, I'm constantly praying for Frenzied Regen. I'm smashing my Frenzied Regen when it's like 2 seconds away of coming off a cooldown, because more often than not, I'm finding myself just like sit really, really, really low. I'm not a big fan. The next thing I want to talk about really quick is going to be the timed run leaderboards and showing off tanks. So as you can see, we're in actually the 20 and up, so we'll leave it here. Proc Warrior stonks are still a little low. Well, Proc Warrior stonks are high, but the players who swap to Proc Warrior are still pretty low, because I think Warrior's a little bit harder to play than other classes in here. And you have Guardian Druid, which dipped down in an insane amount from where it was last season, all the way down to 6.2. And then if you go to 25 and up, 0.8%, there's one Guardian Druid who's timed a key at 25 or higher, where you're seeing a pretty good representation of all other tanks. Obviously, the BDK meta, this is flowing over. I think we're going to see Blood DKs kind of, not fall off, because people are going to chew me out for that. Blood DKs are going to, Blood DK mains, how do I even say this? Okay, BDK players who don't like playing BDK and we're playing it for the meta might be swapping to some of these other tanks as soon as we have access to other trinkets and other raids. So Sepulchre was a raid that we're going to see higher item level loot from, and we're also going to see Sanctum. And Sanctum was a really good raid for a lot of tanks. So as soon as I think Sanctum is available, which is the same day I'm recording this video, Blood DK mains, I think this is going to go down a little bit, and some of these other tanks will go up, especially as we see Prop Paladins and Brewmaster Monks start to perform a little bit better. But Guardian Druid, I can't imagine a world where we see more Guardian Druids in its current state, and I don't think we're going to get a buff either, because one, Blizzard doesn't care about Guardian Druids, but two, the issues that we're having isn't anything with, like, the ability to heal itself or, you know, have throughput. It's literally lack of defensives, which just slows down the run. Because you either run the risk of dying, you have to kite more, or you just get, like I said, into that kind of cyclical pattern of you do damage to a boss, but then that boss full heals. It's like, okay, well then try it again, and then gets down a little bit further, and then it just heals back up to full. Just really frustrating. But let's go to the all-time leaderboard. Actually, let's go here and we'll go to all tanks. So let's play a little game of how many pages or how many ranks do we have to go down to see the first Guardian Druid. This is a fun game I like to play. So this isn't looking at top timed key, which is another metric you can look at, but this is also looking at how many Guardian Druids are actually pushing this season, or have been pushing. Are any of them above 2k? I doubt it. All right, so here's the top 40. You're seeing mostly BDKs, you're seeing a couple of Vengeance, you're seeing a couple of Paladins, and you're seeing a couple of Warriors. I love seeing Warriors at the top. They haven't been up here in a very, very long time, and I'm hoping that more people start to play. So we see our first monk here. We're starting to see a couple of monks now. Still no Guardian Druid. We're now at the 160 mark, still no Guardian Druid. We're going all the way to 180, still no Guardian Druid, 200. So top 200 tanks, not a single Guardian Druid. No Guardian Druid is above 1900. So in from the top rank to Gokuzuki, 210, and this is world, by the way. Top 200 world, 1900. 200 IO difference, no Guardian Druids. Let's keep going. We're seeing Nilly. Okay, that didn't take as long as I thought, but Nilly, you're right there. Nilly's actually like god tier. Big fan. So he goes Kyrian, and the reason he's going Kyrian, and actually why you're seeing a good bit of classes play Kyrian. Well, it's partly bleed, but partly because most tanks actually play Kyrian now that I'm starting to say it. You're actually seeing the Necrolord monk still being played, which is cool. I like Necrolord. I prefer it actually. And Equinox is right here as well. So even out of all these runs, we see an untimed 25 streets here, but most of his other keys are 20 across the board, which is fucking awesome. And there are some other Guardian Druids. If you keep scrolling, you'll see Storm here from EU playing the Night Fae actually, which is a great defensive option. So you're seeing so far, even with Venthyr being known as the go-to Guardian Druid Covenant, you're seeing the Kyrian being played. Kyrian File removes a lot of bleeds and dangerous debuffs. Also, Guardian Druid sucks anyways, so might as well buff your allies is essentially what it comes down to. There's a couple of other like small niche things that I guess I can talk about in a different video, but I don't want to rant too long. I don't want this to be a long video. This is just what I'm doing until servers come up. And then you're seeing the Night Fae. Night Fae Convoke is insanely good defensively. Doesn't do a lot of damage. You can kind of use it if you want a boombox or, you know, chicken weave, but it's kind of difficult to do that, especially if you're not familiar with the dungeons. And we're going to keep scrolling. Are we going to hit the 400 mark before we see the next one? So no, we got Grave Evo from EU also playing the Venthyr, so it's doable, right? So all the way down to 380. Let's just go to 400. So 400, you're seeing 4 Guardian Druids. 4. That's nuts. So all in all, the Guardian Druid is kind of in a rough spot. It's still a tank that I recommend to new players. It's an easy tank to learn. You can do a lot on it. You can focus on the routing. You can focus on the mechanics, but do not push on Guardian Druid this season. I hope I can look back at this video in like 2-3 weeks and be like, ha, that idiot. He thought you couldn't push on Guardian Druid. But as of right now, it's looking pretty rough. Hope you guys enjoyed this rant, this mismatched, unscripted rant that I did. So good luck in your vaults this week, and good luck pushing keys. And also good luck in Sanctum. I love Sanctum, so I'm really excited to actually raid this week. So peace.